America's debt just crossed 100% of GDP for the first time since 1946. And while that's the headline, everybody seems to be missing what's specifically different about this time. And what happens, more importantly, because of that. Now, 170 trillion, that's the real number of America's balance sheet, which is $1.3 million per household, which the US median is only worth about $192,000. Now, the US has been in this position before after World War II and right now. The same playbook that fixed it in 1946, though, is being pulled off the shelf again, and they have to use it. There's no other tool left. But three things changed since 1946. And that gap, that's where the next decade of wealth gets transferred. So I'm gonna walk you through the three things that fixed America's debt in 1946, why all three just reversed, and what this means for the next decade of your wealth. So let's go. All right, so we're gonna jump right in. We're gonna talk about this big debt number, what this means, and specifically how we use this to continue to build our wealth on our portfolios. And I'm talking about this number right here. It's not a forecast. This just happened, where we just passed publicly 100% of debt to GDP. Now, I know that you've heard other numbers like 120%. Let me just break down the difference of that real quickly so I can answer that before I get lit up in comments. The number that you typically hear is not just publicly held debt, it's also government debt. And so if we put those numbers in, yeah, we're back up to about 120%, but this is just publicly held debt, and that way we can keep it apples to 1946. All right, with that out of the way, let's go back because this number is big. And crossing this 100% threshold for the first time in 80 years is really big. And the headline that you probably didn't see is the Treasury report. April 2026 was the debt at 31 trillion, GDP at 31.2 trillion, which means the debt is above the GDP. Now, the math doesn't lie. The debt is exceeding the GDP, so that means that every dollar this country produces in a single year is already owed before you even start counting. That's what that means. And we didn't just cross the 100%, right? We're shooting past that number, and we're heading way higher. The 1946 peak was at 106%. That's the number we're looking to beat right now. Now, of course, 1946 looked nothing like it does today. World War II had just ended, World War I and World War II. America was sitting on massive amounts of debt. The debt was 106% debt to GDP. And of course, the government had to dig themselves out of that. All right. Now, this chart right here kind of helps us understand exactly what happened. So you can see right here the 1946 peak at 106% debt. But then look at how this number just plummeted all the way down to the low in 1974 at only 23% of debt to GDP. Now, that was cut to less than a quarter of where it started 28 years earlier. All right. But then, as you can see, it starts climbing again into 1990, 2000, kind of goes down again, and then just takes off. You can see 1980s, 1990s, faster and faster, faster. Obviously, COVID took us right here. And now 2026, we're back at the 1946 peak. Now, of course, we didn't just climb out of this debt by accident. We got out of this debt because of three specific conditions that were in place back in 1946. Three what we call tailwinds that helped us get out, that kind of did the work here. But the problem for us right now today, sitting right here, is that all three of those tailwinds just reversed. The tailwinds that helped us are now headwinds. And what that means is that the same playbook that's being pulled off the shelf right now, I've talked about it all the time, we'll bring it up in a minute, the same playbook that's being pulled off the shelf right now that the IMF and the BIF are pushing us into, they're gonna run it. They're running it right now. They have to, because there's no other tool to get out of this. But they're running it without the same three tailwinds that made it work the first time. And that's not a small problem to have. That's the entire setup for the next decade. Now, between 1946 and 1974, America was able to cut its debt to GDP ratio by nearly 80 points. And again, that's a big deal. It's a lot of work. And what that means is that every year for 28 straight years, the government was quietly pulling 3 to 4% of GDP out of people holding the debt. If you were holding government debt, if you were holding bonds, you were being liquidated. They were inflating it away. They were stealing, we'll call it what it is, 3 to 4% of your wealth out every single year if you were holding the debt. Now, Carmen Reinhardt's NBER research mapped all this out, and they named it financial repression. Again, if you watch this channel regularly, you hear me talk about that quite often. And it worked, again, because there was those 3 specific conditions that were in place. But if you pull any of them, the whole system breaks. Let's break them down one by one. Tailwind number 1 right here was the baby boom. So the baby boomer generation, the largest segment of the population that we have, 76 million Americans were born between 1946 right here in 1964. Now, what that means is that we had a generation of workers that entered the economy at the exact same time. So the labor force expanded rapidly for 30 straight years. And when the labor force expands rapidly for 30 years, the GDP grows faster, right? So then the GDP was growing faster than the debt. So the ratio, remember debt to GDP is a ratio. So the ratio, debt over GDP, kept falling. Not because they were paying down the debt, because the GDP was growing faster than the debt, because the country got bigger underneath it with all the people. And this matters, right? The differential matters. When you have 76 million people born during that boom, that's roughly 4 million people a year. From 2007 to today, we had 69 million. About 3.6 million a year. That's the same span of years, but as you can see, it's a much smaller cohort, from 4 million a year to 3.6 million a year. Now, going back to this chart again, if we look over here at the right side of the chart, we can see that today births are nearing historic lows. It's a problem. The population is getting old, it's aging. The labor force is shrinking instead of expanding. So that tailwind of surging population, which means GDP grows, is now working away. The tailwind is gone. You can't grow the denominator, the GDP, if the population isn't growing. All right, tailwind number 2 was manufacturing dominance. After World War II, the United States was the manufacturing powerhouse. The United States produced nearly 60% of everything that the world made. 60%, more than half. Every other industrial economy of that time was pretty much bombed out, right? Germany, France, Britain, they were still rationing bread in 1954, but the US was the factory floor. So what that meant was that runaway productivity, real wage growth, and a tax base big enough to pay down its own debt. So again, another tailwind. Now 2026 is a different country. The US share of global manufacturing has now collapsed to 17%, while China is leading that with 28%, about 1.6 times the US output. So what that means is the factory floor that used to be in the US has moved. The productivity engine that paid the debt down from 1946, it's not here anymore. So that means tailwind number 2, that's gone. Then we have tailwind number 3. Tailwind number 3 is the most interesting one here because the people sitting in the seat right now, they see this. They know what made 1946 work. And so if you want to hear what it is, let's just listen to the new Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent. Let's hear him. Let's play this clip.
Banks were invented around Bretton Woods, which was post World War II. Europe was, and Asia was a unique time in America, and it led to incredible prosperity across the world. So why can't we do that again? And why can't we focus on growth?
All right, you heard it directly from the Treasury Secretary, and he's right. Bretton Woods, it worked. It produced the massive prosperity. And he's asking the exact right question. He's asking the question that anybody sitting in that seat should ask. But the answer is, we can't recreate it. In 1944, the world built a system. This was the Bretton Woods system. The dollar was pegged to gold, and then every other major currency in the world was pegged to the dollar. And because of that, capital had nowhere else to run. That's what made the 1946 Playbook work. But in 1971, August 15th, 1971, Richard Nixon broke the peg. We saw the gold standard ended. He basically rug pulled the world. The whole world pegged to the dollar because the dollar was pegged to gold, and then they ripped the gold out from the bottom. And that entered the fiat era. And now by 2026, what we see is that capital is now global. Capital is now digital. Capital moves around frictionless. It moves at the speed of a phone tap. And so things have changed. And if we look at the mechanism here, we can see in 1946, capital was very captive. Right? It was capped, it was restricted. If you held the bond, you had no choice, right? But in 2026, things have changed. Now capital is frictionless. If rates are capped, then you just move your money out of the bond. You buy something else. You buy gold, you buy equity, you buy real estate, you name it, whatever. The system can't trap your capital anymore. So the 3 tailwinds in 1946 are now 3 headwinds in 2026. The same playbook, but an opposite environment. The math of what comes next is what changes things. Now, before we get into the next step, I want to break this down because this is what most people miss. They look at the headwinds and assume the government has options, but they don't. The math forces the same playbook regardless. So we can see this if we look and see what's already happening. Okay, this is the cost of carrying the debt. Net interest as a share of GDP. That's what we want to look at. The interest cost as a percentage of GDP. What we can see is that right now we're running at about 3.25% here in 2026. All right. Now we can see that's a record. Post World War II record, in 1991, we hit 3.2%. That means every dollar going to interest is a dollar not going to something else, not going to defense, not going to healthcare, not going to infrastructure. Now, the new Treasury Secretary, Bessent, he inherited this. Like, he didn't create this problem. Anyone in his seat would be dealing with the same constraints. And it's not just the new Treasury Secretary saying this. The one that left the position before he got there, we're talking about Janet Yellen. She was the former Treasury Secretary. Before that, she was the former Fed chair. And she said basically the same thing. She said that preconditions for fiscal dominance were strengthening, clearly strengthening. The regime has a name. It's on record by the seat that just left this, fiscal dominance. Again, now if you watch my channel on a regular basis, then you already know about this. This mechanism that we talk all the time, the mechanism is what they're running. This is the playbook. Again, the IMF, the BS, they put out white papers on this. The liquidation of government debt requires this mechanism, the financial repression. Now let's talk about how this works so you can understand this. Step number 1 is the government caps interest rates. How do they do that? Well, the Fed sets the interest rates. And if rates run away too long, they buy the bonds to keep the rates down. It's called yield curve control. So step number 1, they keep interest rates low because they can't afford for them to get too high. Step number 2, then domestic institutions are forced to hold the debt at suppressed rates. So that means banks, that means pension funds, that means insurance reserves, things like that. They're mandated to hold that debt at the artificial rates, at the suppressed rates. Okay, then because of that, step number 3, inflation runs hotter than the rates. So now rates are held down artificially at 3, 4, 5%, but inflation's 6, 7, 8, 9%. That is the game. That's how they steal it. And that takes us to step number 4, where the debt burden starts to shrink, right? That's how 1946 worked, liquidation. That playbook right there ran for 28 years and it pulled the debt to GDP, the ratio, down. It pulled it down by nearly 80 points. Now in 2026, the loop runs the exact same way. It caps, right, rates. It forced holders have to hold it. We have hot inflation that runs hot and it happens all at the same time. But the capital now, it can move. That's the problem. So now the cost has to move with it. Now, if we look right here at this fork, we can see this top row, 1946, again, the capital was captive. We had negative real rates, made the debt to GDP shrink, right? That was the tailwinds condition. But we can see the bottom row here, 2026, is that capital moves. And if we have mobile capital, then it can start to trigger inflation. And inflation starts to run hot, which then makes paper holders lose money and real asset holders, they start to gain. So now it's the same mechanism, but with an opposite endpoint. Now, of course, the cost has to land somewhere. Someone has to pay for it. So who pays for it? Well, who pays for it is the paper. The paper. So we're talking about cash, savings, bonds, fixed pensions, dollar-denominated paper. Those holders of those assets, they pay. They get liquidated. However, over here, the real assets, gold, productive assets, real estate, Bitcoin, commodities, those types of assets, they receive. So it transfers wealth from these guys over to these guys. The repression literally creates the asset behavior that hedges against it. That's the wealth transfer of the next decade, right here. Knowing where the cost lands is one piece of it, but then we have to build the structure to receive it instead of paying it. That's the work we have to do. Now, I'll put a link down in the description down below if you want to dig into that side of things. I have a whole training on how that goes, all right? But look, this is the playbook right here. 1946 had 3 tailwinds, 2026 has 3 headwinds. The same playbook, opposite outcome. And this time, the cost or the wealth will transfer because of this. The only question left is which side of the transfer are you going to be on? Now, look at what the playbook can't reach. hard assets. Gold, real estate, equity, Bitcoin, productive equity, right? These are the assets that are built for this exact moment. Of course, Bitcoin is on there. But these are all different forms of the same answer, because as the repression caps the price of paper, it can't cap the price of these scarce world things. Now, I've made a couple of videos already talking about how I believe the government wants gold and Bitcoin to run and be these inflation sponges, if you will, these liquidity sponges. So this can absorb the majority of this inflation that we're talking about. But that's a whole nother topic. Let me know in the comments down below if you want to make a whole nother video on that. But people who own these assets aren't necessarily smarter than people who own the bonds, but they are on the other side of the trade. So you don't have to pick one of these. What you do have to do is you have to pick to be on the right side. Now, it's worth just double clicking into Bitcoin specifically for a second. And if we look at this timeline, what we can see is, again, 1946, financial repression begins. 1971, the Nixon shock, we got rug pulled the world on gold. But then we had 2009, Bitcoin was created. Right? That's when everything changed. It launched into a fiat world that's already broken. Of course, now 2026 is this current moment that we're in. But Bitcoin exists because the playbook keeps running. That's the structural fact under everything else. Now, this is the structural setup of the next decade. This is the playbook that's going to run, and this is the way capital is going to flow. The playbook's already running. The cost is moving from paper holders to real asset holders. That's happening. The only job you have to do is to make sure you're on the receiving side of the transfer instead of the paying side. Anyway, hopefully this makes sense. Let me know what you think about this setup right here. If you like it, leave me a comment down below. Share this video with someone who needs to see it. And as I always say, to your success, I'm out.